Hi group members, this is Susan Baxter and I wanted to respond to our Module 1 discussion, and I'd like to start by going through my worksheet, my identity rank worksheet with you. It was actually a lot harder to fill out than I anticipated when I first looked at it, and after struggling with it for a little while, going back and forth, I finally ranked my top 5 as education, ability, religion, spiritual, familial status, and sexual orientation. Then by choosing two, which I chose education and ability, I then chose a group that would be very different from that or different from that, and I chose developmental education students. So once I chose that group that I'd be interested in exploring through my case study project, I started to think more specifically about developmental education students and what opportunity for exploration might be available for me on my campus this semester. So specifically, I thought of a group of students that we have in a Math 171, which is college algebra class, this semester. Actually, it was all Math 171 students across campus, although I do work on a very small campus, who were all given the NC DAP, which is the placement test for mathematics at community colleges. And they were given the test because we became very interested in the large population of students we see coming through that were placing out of developmental education due to multiple measures. And so we decided to see if they would have placed into developmental education had it not been for multiple measures. But what that also did was allow us to see that students who placed out due to, say, ACT scores or SAT scores, would they have passed the placement test? It also allowed us to see the students who made it through developmental education by passing the developmental education courses and now earned their way into college algebra. Would they repass the placement test? So it kind of led up to a very interesting scenario of how developmental education can become a vicious cycle for a lot of students, and how some get to kind of bypass it through different means and then others don't. And so I kind of would like to look at that population and kind of look at it through that cohort of students, using that test as the data collection and then analyzing that data in a variety of ways. And I actually really look forward to this group's feedback to help me potentially look at some of the different ways that potentially I could analyze that data. So some of the things, though, that I would like to learn is, do they get sucked into a vacuum of an endless cycle of taking developmental courses? I think that happens. I know individual cases where I've seen it happen, where students test, take classes, step away from the college for a while, come back, set out long enough, they have to retest, they take the classes again. Perhaps they're bad test takers and it's not a matter of competence, but because of the regulations and the way things are set up, that's just the cycle they seem to continually feed into. So that's kind of where my interest is at this point, and the group that I'm interested in. Now, taking that group and tying it into the readings, that was also part of the assignment. The first thing that I'll tie it into is our College Students in the United States book. And particularly from Chapter 1, they talk about a lot of different groups of students, and oftentimes developmental students are racially and ethnically diverse. We often see students who are marginalized fall into developmental education due to a host of reasons, and family income was discussed in Chapter 1, and that is a lot of times disadvantaged students who don't have a lot of resources sometimes again fall into that same category. And returning adult students, a lot of times they've just sat out of school for a really long time and are a little rusty on their skills, and they could do poorly on the placement test and fall again into developmental ed. So all of those groups described from Chapter 1 I see as groups that frequently fall into developmental education. In Chapter 2, I saw two categories in particular that jumped out to me: access and socioeconomic status, that both lead to students who generally well, I guess I should say that community colleges' open door policies greatly address access and socioeconomic status. We pull people from both of those pockets all the time. And then also expectations. A lot of times I think students who might have been faced with expectations in that particular chapter they're talking about from the high school level, who might have been faced with expectations of you're not going to go to college. Again, the community college with the open door policy is their option. So, and a lot of times that same population goes to developmental education. So I think that chapter did tie somewhat with um, this topic as well. Now, tying a little bit into how college affects students, um, the two texts both discussed Chickering's 7 vectors of student development. And so that was in both of them, but specifically in the theories and modules of students change in college, models, excuse me. Vector 1, achieving competence, I think is a really big issue for developmental education students, because I think that as adults, when they hear that they've been placed in developmental education, a lot of times it's really hard to swallow, and they kind of feel like a failure going in sometimes, and it's almost like a self-defeating type of feeling. And then especially if they get in courses and have to repeat the courses, sometimes they could just be very hard for them, and it can create a very vicious cycle. So, and there was also some work in chapter 7 from the other book where they talked about that as well, where once you feel defeated like that. So a lot of good stuff, but I'm way over on time already, so I'm going to stop there, and I really look forward to your feedback and watching your videos as well. Thank you so much.